All right, welcome back in, you guys, to Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 248. My name is Sai, and today we're just gonna talk a little bit about the chapter. I want to share my thoughts with you guys and just have a general conversation. So with that being said, let's get this started. So 3 weeks ago, we ended off the chapter with Yuji trying to stab Sukuna with the Executioner's Blade. The Executioner's Blade is touted as a one-hit, one-kill. Yuji was in Sukuna's blind spot at the time while Sukuna was preoccupied. And here's the thing, in those 3 weeks, with that being the final panel of chapter 247, I have not seen a single person say that Sukuna was going to die. No, it was all about how Sukuna was going to survive this attack. It all boiled down to either him tanking the attack and surviving, him having some crazy armor that deflected it, or him simply just dodging it. Turns out it was the last option. Come chapter 248, Sukuna just simply steps out of the way. Very unceremonious, very heartbreaking, but yes, he dodges the attack, and that is the last chance that Yuji will have to kill him with the Executioner's Blade because it ends up crumbling in his hands. The reason for this is because Higuruma is dead. He is KO'd right now. And even though he is KO'd and the Executioner's Blade crumbled and technically his curse technique should be going away, the Kamutoke is still gone. You know, Sukuna never retrieved the item that he had that was confiscated, which I personally really liked, right? Because even though Higuruma is dead and gone, he still has a lingering effect on the battlefield. Taking Kamutoke away from Sukuna is a pretty big deal. Even though we haven't really seen Sukuna utilize it that much throughout these fights, it's still nice knowing that Higuruma at least nerfed him a little bit. Speaking of Higuruma though, I'm not usually one to be a conspiracy theorist in the JJK verse. Even with Gojo being dead, I'm not like super hard on the train that he's gonna come back to life. But for Higuruma though, I don't know, man. So here's the thing. We find out this chapter that Wee has been teleporting the dead bodies that Sukuna has been collecting over to Shoko. And Sukuna kind of makes a note like, hey, you know, Shoko's going to try to heal them, but her RCT should be less than half when it's used on others. So, you know, theoretically, they can't come back to life. And for Gojo, that stands pretty damn true, right? That man has been cut in half by a world dismantling cut. But as far as Higuruma goes, I mean, his body is still intact. We saw him get slashed up point blank, but technically, like, his head is still there. The wounds don't look super deep, in my opinion. You know, I'm not a doctor, but I feel like if there was one character to come back to life between Gojo and Higuruma, I would say Higuruma has a pretty damn good chance of making an appearance in the epilogue or after this fight. I still think he's going to be KO'd. He's not going to show up and fight Sukuna again, but if he were to show up a month later, you wouldn't exactly see me complaining about that. So since we're on the topic of dead bodies, we have to talk about Gojo, mainly because Sukuna himself brings it up in this chapter. Like I said earlier, I'm not one to just immediately jump on the bandwagon that characters are going to come back to life, but this is the first point in time where I'm starting to scratch my head a little bit and say, well, maybe there's a small chance, right? You know, maybe it's because I am constantly online and I see people coming up with brand new theories on how Gojo's gonna come back to life pretty soon. And I just gotta say, but this chapter actually swayed me a little bit. Them teleporting Gojo's dead body to Shoko just seems pre-planned. It's almost like they have an idea on what to do with that body. I mean, of course, they could just be wanting to preserve him for a really nice burial later on. You know, maybe they're going to hold a beautiful funeral for Gojo later, but I don't know, because Shoko is such an interesting character. We know that she can use RCT on other people, and she is the healer of the JJK verse, but we still don't know what her curse technique is, and if it has something to do with reverse curse technique or bringing people back to life or healing them, then there could be a chance that Gojo could come back. You know, I can't outright dismiss it. I don't know. I need more things here, but, you know, if anybody can do it, I guess Shoko would be the best character to bring Gojo back to life. One of the main reasons why we never considered the Shoko route earlier is because she wasn't present on the battlefield. But of course, though, being teleported to Shoko doesn't exactly guarantee that they're gonna come back to life, because throughout the series we've seen Shoko with multiple dead bodies right before her, and she has not brought anyone back to life before, so I wouldn't hold my breath on it. But like I said, if there's any character that could do it, it would be her. If we come to find out that she does have some wacky, overpowered ability to bring people back to life, I would hope that there is a equal payment for that process. Maybe she can bring Gojo back to life, but she has to sacrifice her own life or sacrifice cursed energy that matches Gojo's output, which I don't think is actually possible. But yeah, I would like to hope that there is some cost to it. So before Yuji and Sukuna actually start fighting, Sukuna pauses for a second. He kind of starts thinking to himself like, why do I hate this kid so much? You know, what is it about Yuji that really pisses me off? And I love that we're getting, 3 to 4 pages dedicated to this, because time and time again, Sukuna has been shown to be an absolute menace when it comes to teasing Yuji and making fun of him and, calling him fodder. And now we finally know why. The reason why Sukuna gets so pressed when he sees Yuji's face is because he has been inside of his body. He knows that Yuji has an indomitable will. No matter how many times his mental is broken, Yuji comes right back. He bounces back. He is resilient. And that is the main reason why Sukuna doesn't like him. Because despite Yuji being nowhere close to his power level, this is the one area where Yuji actually does match him. And that right there just bugs the absolute hell out of him. And also, I love how he says another reason why it bothers him so much is because he was inside of his body and that he knows this kid. It's almost like he's fighting a friend in a weird way, right? It's something about two souls intermingling in a single body that just takes this relationship to another level. So when he says he wants to shred up his ideology, he then adds another rule to the culling games. Well, technically, he didn't add it himself, but this is Kenjaku's backup plan. So if Kenjaku were to die, his backup plan, at least to my understanding, is that Megumi would be the new leader of the merger with Tengen. Since Sukuna is currently inhabiting Megumi's body, technically, Sukuna is the leader of the merger. But here's the thing. This is where I think we're gonna throw a little loop around, because I think Megumi is going to come back. I feel like this is the third time we've talked about people coming back in this one video. Higuruma, Gojo, now Megumi. I think Megumi, if there was a chance for him to come back, now would be the best point in time. Because we do know that Megumi's will or spirit is still existent within Sukuna right now. Because when he first took control of Megumi's body, Megumi tried really damn hard to fight for control of the body, or at least to nerf Sukuna to some extent. And it worked, right? Because his attacks on Yuji weren't exactly as powerful as they should be. Sukuna couldn't exactly move the way he wanted to because of Megumi. So what Sukuna did was kill his sister and had the bath, which was supposed to completely absorb Megumi's soul in darkness. Megumi is still alive deep down there. He just needs to claw his way out. He needs to break himself out of that darkness that's surrounding him, or at least the darkness that is surrounding his mental. So, since this chapter showed how unshakable Yuji's will and ideals are, I feel like this is the perfect chance, or the perfect setup for Megumi to also bounce back as well, to show that even if he gets broken down, he can come and get back up. Of course, though, there's nothing that should lead us to believe this will happen. This is just me talking about a theory at this point, but I feel like this does set the stage for Megumi up quite well. Maybe Sukuna goes to perform in the merger, and Megumi's like, no, I don't know how that would play out. But yeah, I feel like Megumi coming back is looking somewhat decent right here, especially since the ball is in his court with the Tengen merger. So now, Kenjaku. Kenjaku being dead. Yuta shows up at the very end of the chapter to square off against Sukuna, and it's a really nice moment, right? I don't know how Yuta traveled from A to B so quickly, but he does it. And here's the thing. People were also wondering if Yuta would come back with stitches on his head, right? Maybe Kenjaku's assurance plan was him taking over another dead body, or another body in general. Turns out that did not happen. So this does lead me to believe Kenjaku is actually dead, which is fine because he's someone that we all knew had to die by the end of the series. But it goes back to the whole thing of this being unceremonious. It's like, okay, like, Kenjaku has been a big bad villain throughout, the past 250 chapters. He's like the Orochimaru mastermind here. And the dude got sneak attacked. I mean, of course, the Takaba fight was amazing. I actually was a big fan of it. But is this really it? You know, was that it for Kenjaku? Because we gotta remember that he really wanted to see this merger. Like that was his dream, to see the merger with Tengen. He was so goddamn curious about it. So him not seeing it, or at least not seeing it through, is interesting. I feel like he might have some other plan that's cooking in the background and we just don't know it yet. But yeah, I don't know. If this was it for Kenjaku, I'd be fine with it. But I do just feel like he has a greater plan in mind other than just giving Sukuna control of the merger. Like while that's all fine and dandy and it makes sense, like, oh, I'm out of the game, so I'm giving it to my buddy here, Sukuna. It's also like, you know, like, what about yourself? Like, you got nothing else? You're not gonna see this through? I don't know. But yeah, we end off the chapter with Rika coming out and squaring off against Sukuna alongside Yuta, and we have the King of Curses now fighting the Queen of Curses. And it's a really exciting fight, but, you know, at the end of the day, even with Yuta and Rika here, the odds are still overwhelmingly in Sukuna's favor. So something's gonna have to change pretty soon. Maybe Yuji will bring out another new ability, because I forgot to mention it, but Yuji does have reverse curse technique, and it turns out last chapter he did get a part of his body blown off, but he RCT'd it back into existence. We love to see it. It is always a good day when Yuji learns a new ability. So yeah, that is the end of the chapter. Pretty straightforward. The main question I want to ask to you guys, because I personally just don't know the answer, but how do you guys think we're gonna beat this guy? Like at this point, with Sukuna being in this position, being in charge of the merger, you know, only fighting Yuta and Rika, which apparently Gege in a little column answered that Sukuna was indeed stronger than Rika. It's like, okay, like, what's going on now, right? Like how are they gonna beat this guy? Obviously, I feel like it has to do with Yuji some way, somehow, but unless he learned more techniques in the past month, I'm just not too sure. The one thing I do go back to is a very early chapter of JJK where Gojo mentions that since Sukuna and Yuji's soul were fused together in one body, that eventually Yuji would learn some of Sukuna's abilities and curse techniques. I feel like I have a lot of stock in that theory. Maybe it's not a theory though, since Gojo is the one who said it, but yeah, maybe Yuji whips out a cleave, a dismantle, maybe the fire ability that we saw at Shibuya. But yeah, I feel like something has to change here, because if things simply go at the pace we are witnessing at the end of this chapter with Rika, Yuta, and Yuji versus Sukuna, I feel like Sukuna is just going to stomp and demolish. Of course, Yuta does have a domain expansion that we have not seen yet, so maybe we actually see that next chapter, which I think would be massively hype. And who knows, maybe that is what I'm looking for. Maybe that is what will turn the tides of battle. But yes, that is it for today, guys. One last thing I do want to leave off on. You might notice that this is on my good old SYVN channel, and I'm going to keep the JJK reviews on here. I don't want this channel to become completely dead. I know I'm getting nothing out of this, right? I don't know how many of you guys watch the channel update, but this is essentially a channel where I'm just going to throw the JJK videos at this point. I'll just have fun here, just have little JJK discussions and some other stuff. But yeah, hey, thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll catch you guys in the next JJK chapter. Signing out.